So Thomas Aquinas has this little book called On Being and Essence. And as you can see, it really is a little book compared to the Summa especially. The Summa is enormous, the Summa Theologica. This book is very small. And it's different from the Summa in some other respects. It's a lot more technical. It's less accessible to the layman. I think he wrote it for a more select audience, for those who had more training in Aristotelian metaphysics. And it's also a bit different from the Summa in its sources. You can find an unsurprising, eclectic collection of sources. You see plenty of Aristotle, you see Boethius, and so on. But you don't see Augustine oozing off of every other page, maybe every page, like you would in the Summa Theologica. Instead, the Islamic medieval philosophers are a lot more prominent. In particular, Averroes and Avicenna. Those are the Latinized names. The anglicized, but anglicized directly from the Arabic names would be Ibn Sina and Ibn Rushd. Ibn Sina he'll refer to by name, or by the Latin name Avicenna. Averroes, or Ibn Rushd, he refers to as the commentator. Aristotle, as always, is the philosopher, and Averroes is the commentator on the philosopher, an important role. Now, this book could be summarized in 4 points, which I'll now attempt to do. First is hylomorphism. You may be familiar with this concept already. If you're not, it's covered on this channel. I recommend, in particular, the What Are Things playlist to learn about hylomorphism. Hylomorphism, briefly, is the theory that physical things are not purely physical things. They are composites of matter and form. So this book, for example, is made of matter, but not only matter. It's also partially non-physical reality. It is a combination or a mixture of matter and non-physical form. And that's what physical things are. Now, Aquinas also says the human being is such. The human being is a composite of matter and form. Now, that form in the human being is the soul. And so now let's move to the second point. The soul, the human soul, is purely immaterial, and angels likewise. What he says of souls, he also says of angels here. The human soul and an angel are purely immaterial beings, but they are also composites. The human being is a composite of matter and form. The book is a composite of matter and form. My tie is a composite of matter and form. But the human soul is purely form, and it's a composite of something else, and a composite of two other things. And those things are essence and existence. And what this means is, in a manner of speaking that may be more familiar to some philosophers, some scholars of philosophy, the soul is contingent. It does not necessarily exist. My soul might not have existed, and angels also don't necessarily exist. They're not necessary beings. The essence of the soul is not that it exists. The essence is that it is non-physical and so on. But the essence, if you gave a complete description of the essence of the soul, it would not include existence. Its existence is given to it, as it were, as a gift from God. Or very literally as a gift from God, though I don't recall him saying that much in the text. So the soul and the angel, or any human soul and an angel, all human souls and all angels, have an essence, and their essence does not involve existence. Now, moving to the third point, there is a being whose essence does include existence. And there is one such being only, and that being is God. There is one being whose existence includes his essence, or whose existence is his essence. A being of such perfect unity and simplicity in the metaphysical sense, having no parts. A being of such unity and simplicity that it exists necessarily. Its existence is its essence. Its essence includes existence. This is God. Now, there is here a delightful little argument for the existence of God. This is, I think, in chapter 5 of the text. And, maybe it's chapter 4. Chapter 4 of the text is the argument for the existence of God. Let's review the composites. The human person, or any hylomorph, the human being or any hylomorph is a composite of matter and form, and its essence does not include its existence. The human soul, or an angel, likewise has an essence, but its essence does not include existence. And it is a composite, then, of essence and existence. There's the existence and there's the essence. There might have been the essence without the existence. But God had the kindness to us to give our essences existence, i.e. to create us. And the difference between us and God is not a composite. God's essence is his existence. Now, the argument runs something like this. Consider, by way of illustration, a phoenix or a centaur. Aquinas says phoenix. Centaur will do, or hobbit for that matter. You can know what the essence of this thing is just by considering its definition. The essence is what is captured by the definition of a thing. So you can know what a centaur or hobbit or a phoenix is just by contemplating the definition of the thing. And you can know this, you can understand this without knowing whether such a thing exists. Or, in the case of the phoenix, knowing that it does not exist. Now, this is much the same with the essence of a man, or with the essence of any individual soul, or an angelic soul, or a book. The essence can be known apart from the existence, because the essence is distinct from the existence. In the case of the phoenix, just helps to illustrate that pretty well, but consider it also for any other thing that does exist. Its essence does not include its existence. The two are separable, because the thing could cease to exist. And there was a time when the thing did not exist. There was a time when I did not exist. Ergo, therefore, I, a man, have an essence which does not include my existence. The existence and the essence are separable. Now that means that everything that exists, whose essence is separable from its existence, got its existence from somewhere. And what Aquinas now does depends on the principle of sufficient reason, which states that there is an explanation for everything. Or more, phrased differently, you could put it this way. The principle of sufficient reason states that everything has a reason external to itself, except for something whose reason is itself or is included in itself. I should phrase this differently. Everything has an explanation, which is distinct and separate from it, except for something which is or includes its own explanation, and that would be God. And the thing about the principle of sufficient reason, as Aquinas understands it, is that one thing may be an explanation for another, while itself requiring an explanation, but there cannot be an infinite regress of these explanations, or else nothing is explained. The explanation has to come from somewhere in order to be anywhere, and so it must begin somewhere. And it begins with the first cause, the unmoved mover. It begins with that thing which has no external explanation, but is its own explanation, or contains its own explanation, and explains everything else as a result, i.e. a necessary being, a being whose essence is its existence, i.e. God. So take those premises, the principle of sufficient reason and the impossibility of an infinite regress, according to the principle of sufficient reason, and add to them the premise that nothing is a cause of itself, and observe that the essence of me, or any other thing, the television behind me, the book, etc., these essences are separable from their existences, and then you realize you need an explanation which itself contains its own explanation to start it all off, as it were, to begin the explaining, to ground the explanatory process. And so God must exist. Now, finally, that was an overview of the argument. That was the third point, that there is a being whose existence is his essence, that is God. Now, a fourth point from this book involves these corollary doctrines he expounds on. What he has given us in saying that God exists and that God's existence is his essence is not only an account of God as a necessary being, but he has also given us the doctrine of divine simplicity, the doctrine that God has no parts. There are three ways a thing may have an essence, he says. First, it may have an essence which is distinct from its existence, and accordingly such a thing is a composite. It is a composite of essence and existence. And it is not made of matter. That's what the human soul or an angel is. Or it may be all of those things except that it is made of matter and immaterial form, and that's what a hylomorph is. And then there's a third way thinking of an essence, and that's by being identical to its essence. And that's God, whose existence is his essence. But there's more. With medievals, as you might have noticed on this channel in videos on Anselm, with these medieval philosophers, you have this delightful application of Platonism, or something very like Platonism. Plato spoke of the good. Plato spoke of beauty itself, of these highest forms, these highest immaterial perfections. And in medieval divine simplicity, these things are God. God is goodness itself. God is beauty itself. God is unity itself. God is truth itself. You can say this in medieval divine simplicity, and Aquinas does this here. He says that God's existence is his essence. That in itself is a statement of divine simplicity, but as is typical for a medieval philosopher theologian, he also says God has all perfections, and furthermore, God is all perfections. If God had perfections and was not identical to his perfections, then God would be a composite. God is not a composite. Therefore, since God has perfections, God is his perfections. This is the way of the divine simplicity. Now, in closing, I should make one observation that might be helpful to some Aquinas scholars out there. The argument for the existence of God here is, I think, very similar in structure and the pattern of reasoning, and includes some of the same premises as the argument from the five ways, which is, I believe, the third argument. The argument from possibility necessity, the argument from some things that exist but do not exist necessarily. I think the main difference between these two arguments is simply that the argument in the five ways, this third way argument, focuses on things that exist contingently and on their coming into existence and perhaps passing out of existence. In other words, it depends on things' existence within time. And the argument here is without respect to time, but is simply with respect to metaphysical explanations or explanations of realities. And it's an argument independent of things coming to be within time. So again, it's like and unlike the Summa Theologica in this respect as well, that there's an argument here very similar to the Summa, with some of the same premises, and an argument similar in structure, very, very similar, I think, in structure. As I understand it right now, at any rate, that's how I understand it. Very similar in structure. Almost exactly the same pattern of reasoning. But the argument in the Summa, the third way, is more accessible to the layman. And this one is meant for minds that have been schooled in hardcore Aristotelian medieval metaphysics. The one in the Summa is more accessible to those who think of causality in terms of time. All right, that's all. I hope that helps some of you.